Hello and welcome back to Adventures Unpacked. I'm your host, Noah, and joining me again this week is Jeff. Jeff went on the adventure, and we're going to take some time here to break that down, unpack it, and talk about all the nitty-gritty details that don't really make it into the video. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. I just got back from lots of travel, so it's nice to be home for a little while. It's just nice to be in a familiar space and with loved ones.
You spent a little bit of time doing a solo backpacking trip in Yellowstone, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this was my first solo backpacking trip. My first ones were actually covered in Get Out There, one of our first videos on the channel, after we made this new switch to this kind of content. And that was really growth filled, I guess I could say.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all with people my age, and there's a lot of support. And obviously, when I was on my trips that we covered in like AGA or A Grand Adventure, I had my coworker and I was focused on my job. All of those, trips had great lessons, but this one was different because, it was just me. And if things went sideways, I had to rely on myself to get out of it. No office to call to back me up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about it quite a bit in the past, this concept of things just kind of feel better when you're more off on your own. Things look prettier versus, we've talked specifically about Yellowstone a lot being kind of the Disneyland of the national parks and being very tourist centered.
Yeah.
You took the opportunity and had a chance to see the opposite side of Yellowstone. How was that, seeing a completely different side of Yellowstone that most visitors may never see?
Oh man, it's gorgeous. I totally understand why it was created as the first national park. I mean, the diversity in the landscape, going from, geysers to rolling hills to forests to these like big open fields of, it's not wheat, but to the untrained eye, it looks kind of like wheat.
Like those
like
tall
golden
grasses.
fields. Yeah. And especially when the wind hits it, the waves it creates. And then, tons of animals. If I had to just pick out one thing that it was lacking was, I didn't see any big animals, but because I was by myself, I was totally happy with that.
Yeah. Just play it safe. Did you feel that you got away from that tourist hotspot?
Definitely. Absolutely. It really does feel like you're in the middle of the Magic Kingdom when you're sitting there next to Old Faithful, right? There's hundreds of people all with their cameras out, and some people have ice cream cones and they're going to and from the gift shop, But being in the middle of the woods, this trip that I went on was a combination of trails, and one of them that I joined with is called the Thoroughfare Trail. It's, I think, 50 miles from any road in any direction, like when you're in the center of it. Yeah, you're like really far away from people and civilization, and it feels that way. So yeah, like you described it, the exact opposite feeling of being in the middle of the hot spot.
Yeah.
Old Faithful.
So do you want to jump in and start breaking down what I guess there's two aspects we can take this. We can break down what the trip was supposed to look like and then what the trip actually did look like, because as the viewers might see within the video, that shifts pretty early on.
Yeah, I spent maybe a few days really planning this out, no more than like a week and a half, which is not a lot of time, especially when you need to get permits and all that jazz, which you do for any backcountry hiking in Yellowstone. I had a lot of confidence going into this planning phase, and I wanted to test myself. I think that's the main goal, right? That's what I wanted to get out of this experience. And so thought, well, it sounds cool to do 100 miles. I wasn't sure, in what timeline I wanted to do it. I had seen a lot of cool landmarks in Yellowstone during my trips that I was running with my students. And so I thought, well, it'd be cool to connect them, right? So I started at the southern entrance, and I thought, okay, well, I love to see Yellowstone Lake, and I'd want to get up to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, which you've actually seen.
Yeah.
And you can tell why I'd love to go see it.
It's an amazing landmark.
Yeah, definitely. So that was my goal. I was going to start at the southern entrance and get to the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. But, as I was looking at the calendar and I needed to get back to work, I realized I needed to make that happen in 6 days. And I thought, okay, well, what's that mileage look like? And it was like 102 or something like that. Like it was It was pretty intense. And then I looked at the topographical map. Okay, well, it looks like there's a lot of days of really flat, backpacking. And I thought, I can make that work. So
Gave it
I
a
just
go.
sent it. I don't know if it's necessarily the terrain or just my like lack of experience overall, right? Like my fourth backpacking trip ever. But yeah, I'd severely overestimated my abilities, and I learned that pretty quick.
Going from the 100 miles and 6-day trip that you initially planned to what it became, what did that look like? What did you end up doing that we see in the video?
Yeah, about 60 miles.
A little over half. That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah. I built in this safety net. The combination of trails that I took allowed for sort of like a bail in case shit goes sideways. I highly recommend you do that if you are doing what I was trying to do, which is kind of push yourself. Because I needed a bailout option, and I realized that around day 2, 30 miles into the wilderness. As we might have talked about before, the Yellowstone is kind of designed as one big square, and then it's like 4 roads in all the cardinal directions kind of come to this like center roundabout. And so this started at the south entrance road and then kind of moved its way diagonally, met the south shore of the Yellowstone Lake, and then kind of moved around that and then held onto the east shore and then went all the way up to the east entrance road. And then it was supposed to go another 40 miles out and around and back. But yeah, I was able to, right at that crossroads, cut it off and then try to find a way home from there.
Which you had luck with, surprisingly enough. It seems like you had pretty good luck with hitchhiking your way back. If you want to jump in and just kind of give us an idea of maybe what that felt like going into it.
Well, it started with a pretty long road trip. So I'd flown home after working those sessions that we see in a Grand Adventure. And I drove back out to Wyoming because I was going to work kind of an extended season, but I had a little bit of time before that. So I drove for 2-3 days. The excitement was strong. I wanted to be smart about it. I could feel, I don't know, the way I like to describe it to my students is excitement and fear are the same, like 2 sides of the same coin. I could tell I was feeling both, freaking out about what could happen and then what I would do about it. And, there's always risks going solo. That was definitely on my mind. Maybe it was like ego. I was like, oh, this is going to be so cool, and I think that's kind of what I'm experiencing at the end of that first day when I sit down at the log. When I look back at that footage, I realize that I think I'm experiencing some form of like, how ego death is not the right phrase.
That's so extreme,
what I mean?
But I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm letting go of those attachments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, I wanted it to look this way, or I wanted people to think a certain thing about me because I did it. Yeah. Once I was able to let go of that, things felt a lot better for the rest of the trip.
It seems like it. It seems like once you got over that hump, you kind of allowed yourself to enjoy some of the smaller stuff and taking your time and not trying to push yourself. How about safety, personal safety with this, with it being solo? I feel like you might have to rely more on yourself. Did you do anything specifically different with safety in the backcountry while you're solo?
It's tough because I think, the trips that I went on, for a Grand Adventure, we had a lot of safety measures and a lot of backups. So I took that same mindset. I'd say it was pretty similar with that, right? I wanted to make sure that I had, backup plans in case things went wrong. I thought I packed my PLB, which is a personal locator beacon, just in case things went bad. I could press a button and at least someone would have my location. And I found out midway through my trip that I did not have it with me. So honestly, I would say I probably tried a little less than I did when I was with my students.
Glad you made it out okay and you didn't have to use it. So I guess all things worked out.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where the line between it being like a funny story or, a really sad one is super thin, unfortunately. I'm glad I'm on this side of it.
Absolutely. So getting into that first day and you're first hitting the trail, and I believe, what did it look like? About 10 miles the first day?
Yep, 10.5 miles. And it starts with a river crossing. That's kind of, I don't know if we'll show it, but there's a pretty long, is the widest river I crossed the whole time. Mm-hmm. And that's where I saw the most amount of people because that splits off into a few different trails. Yeah, I'm wondering, it's possible people might have some questions about like maybe some of the camera angles because I am solo on this trip and it's pretty clear that I'm solo. And so if you're wondering, yes, I did have to cross that river twice to get that shot.
We could throw that footage up here. I've got footage of him walking across, then putting on his backpack, then crossing it. That river was the Snake River, correct?
Yeah, if you drive into Yellowstone to the south entrance, you will almost definitely see the Snake River, or even just, hanging out in the Teton Valley, you'll definitely see the snake.
So that was early on when you were still using your water shoes to cross the river before you completely abandoned that idea. Was that a really tough crossing because it was so wide?
I chose a good time of day to cross that river, and that's a fairly weak point in the Snake. It's such a wide and long river. My whitewater rafting trip that is at the end of those trips, we didn't really showcase it too much. You can raft on it, right? People can whitewater raft, people can kayak on the Snake. So that section that we're crossing for that part of the trail is one of the weakest parts, which I'm grateful for, because it can get pretty deep. And in terms of rivers I've crossed since then, I would describe it as tame.
So are you saying that the river that you whitewater raft down at the end of AGA, I believe we showcase that in the credits, was the Snake River?
Yeah, that was the Snake.
That's cool. I didn't realize that. So on it twice, two completely different experiences, it seems. Pretty quickly, once you get to camp, you realize that the 10 miles is really kicking your ass, and you might have to start rethinking this trip entirely.
Yeah, I mean, so I mentioned that I shot off like a rocket, right? Once I crossed the river, it was really straightforward from there. The trail was easy to follow. And that first day was awesome. It was a great mixture of landscapes. The tough part came after the second river crossing. I kind of just pushed myself straight forward. I didn't make any stops between the two. And I kept a really fast pace because I kept thinking, okay, 100 miles, 100 miles, 100 miles.
Yeah.
This is my easy day. Because my initial plan was to have, I think, 3 out of the 6 days be over 20 miles. And so I thought, okay, well, this is my heaviest pack day, but I can probably make it. Like I need to, if I'm going to be doing 20-mile days, I need to keep a good pace here. So I was really pushing it, crossed the second river, and there's a hill directly after the second river, and I was trying to get up that, and I started to notice like my right heel had this like really sharp pain in it. It didn't matter what I did; it was just stabbing pain in my heel. Not great. And then obviously with 30 pounds on your back, it feels even worse.
And then you made it to camp on that first night and had to sit down with the camera where you reevaluated yourself and kind of threw up this idea that the trip might look different. Hey there, Noah here. Sorry to interrupt the episode, but I wanted to give you a quick reminder. You can watch the full adventure behind this podcast over on our YouTube channel, as well as the full video version of this podcast. Same full-length episodes, but with extra visuals and behind-the-scenes moments. You can find these videos and more over at youtube.com/adventureslive. And if you're thinking, hey, I would like to do a trip like this myself, we've got you covered. Over on our Patreon, we've put together exclusive adventure packets, including our full trip itineraries, detailed maps, gear lists, and real-world info that we've used to plan our own journeys. Plus, we also got a collection of free how-to documents over on Patreon as well. Perfect if you're looking to build your skills and start planning your own adventures. You can check out all of that over at patreon.com/adventureslive. If you're looking for a place to connect with fellow adventurers, come hang out with us over at the ALP Campground, our community Discord server. It's a welcoming space full of listeners just like you, swapping tips, sharing photos, asking questions, and planning their next big outing. One last thing, if you're enjoying our show and you want to help us grow, the best way to support us is completely free. Word of mouth. Help us reach more adventurers like you by sharing the show with a friend. Leave us 5-star ratings on your favorite podcast app, and like and subscribe over on YouTube. A few clicks makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate it. All right, that's enough for me. Let's jump back into the episode. So waking up the next day, did you feel kind of ready to go? Were you well rested, and did you kind of start having this hopeful idea that maybe you can cut it short and enjoy your time, or did that come a little bit later after you kind of pushed through the slog?
I was optimistic waking up. Anyone that's ever been out camping, no one necessarily has like a good night of sleep when they're out camping. Restful sleep because your body's exhausted, and then you feel a lot better the next day. Got a stretch, got the bear hang down, packed up camp, and I thought, okay, I have 17 and a half miles today queued up. If I can do that I'll get a better sense for what the terrain is like and how I paced it, and I think that'll give me a better sense. It was kind of like I was in information mode. Um, and so I was really optimistic heading into that second day. Uh, Cautiously so, I guess, because that first day taught me to be a little wary.
Hopefully with a slightly lighter pack, but I guess you didn't end up eating much that first night. You had mentioned that you were starting to feel sick when you were trying to eat your dinner.
It was a combination of the late evening heat and then pushing myself a lot that day. And that was a real bummer because I knew I needed the calories and I also wanted to ditch the weight.
So how did day 2 look for you once you got going with a slightly more positive, optimistic view?
I mean, it's similar to the start of the first day, right? I start quick. My route did change from what I initially was going to do. So I point out at the trailhead on that first day that I'm going to go from, north of Heart Lake and then kind of bounce it east to south of Yellowstone Lake. And what I ended up actually doing at the, divergence of the trails was stick south of Heart Lake because it was fewer miles, and I realized that it was silly to go farther and longer for no reason. That's when I ran into Chris, the CDT thru hiker who was going southbound, and I mentioned it was like being around an object with larger gravity, like he was, planning to go 30 miles that day. And his pace was insane. Like trying to keep up with him was all I could try to do. Once I got to camp for the second night, I knew that this trip was not going to look like I expected it to. 17 and a half miles that second day was the most I'd ever done backpacking. I mean, I think during my trips with my students, the most we'd ever did was like 9 miles in a day. So, I'd already had my personal best the day before and beat that at 17 and a half. Once I realized that, I was proud of myself, but I was also like, man, I don't know if I can do it again, break it for a third day in a row. One thing I had not considered was the type of terrain I was going to be walking on. It wasn't like a nice flat dusty trail, I guess is my point, right? There was a handful, there's like small little creeks and plenty of actual river crossings, lots of bouts of mud, and then many sections where the trail just disappeared into the grass, which often led me astray. And I don't know, the feeling that starts to creep in, like I have anxiety just generally in life. I try my best to manage it, but it definitely does pop its, evil little head in, when you've lost the trail, you've searched for about 5 to 10 minutes and you still can't find it. And then it starts to creep in that you're in the middle of the woods with no way to call for help besides pressing a button, which
you don't have.
I now know I don't have. That was pretty scary at times. Yeah. So second day overall, getting to camp, very, very tired. I know things are going to look different than I want them to, or I initially wanted them to. And I'm like trying to convince myself that it's okay. And that's when I realized I have the road that I can exit out of.
Throughout the video, we see that your body takes a beating. Did you start feeling that this early on?
No, yeah. Around day 2, I kind of gave up on switching my shoes in and out for all the river crossings. I mean, we're talking a river crossing every 20 to 30 minutes. It's either take the whole pack off, take your socks and shoes off, put the water shoes on, tighten it, then find a way to like latch your shoes on to your backpack or carry them, and then cross the river, then reverse the whole thing. It's like a whole 10-minute process at minimum.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to get somewhere before dark, set up camp and have food, I don't know. It just at some point it became not worth the time.
We see later in the video you taking off your shoes after one of those long day of river crossings, and your feet look decimated. They're some of the wettest wrinkly feet that I've seen, and you held them right up into that camera. It looked rough.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I was hoping I'd have a good wiki feet score once we and that it wouldn't be too bad, but I think that's gonna be my anchor for the rest of my life. It's gonna be a screenshot of that image.
So moving forward into day 3 and possibly day 4, you're really starting to wear down your body. But I feel as your body is going downhill, your mood and your attitude's kind of going uphill, and you start enjoying some of the scenery and some of the activities a little bit more. As you mentioned within the video, you say it feels less like a race against the clock.
The pressure of it all reduced down to a much more manageable level, right? What I'd want it to be for just a recreational fun trip. And yeah, so I think after the second night, I had convinced myself that it was the smart decision to just hang out, like just, take the opportunity that's in front of you. Why try to force this to be something that it's not, just because you had a vision for it initially. And once I made that pivot, yeah, my mood shifted entirely, and it felt a lot less like I have to get to this time or else I'm fucked. Now it was, oh, okay, well, I'll just get as far as I can.
Yeah.
And I'll just enjoy my trip along the way. And that was a much better way to approach the trip.
And then getting into day 4, am I correct? Is that around the time where you made it to Yellowstone Lake?
So I was on the south shore of Yellowstone Lake by day 2, actually, after merging with the Thoroughfare Trail. So that was like southeast, I guess you could say, of Yellowstone Lake. And at times they like butt right up to it. And then there are camps right alongside the east shore. And that's what, nights 4 and 5 look like, much closer to the shore itself. And I feel less like I'm in the woods. Yeah, night 4 and 5 are really close to the lake. That was amazing because when you're on that shore, it feels just like an ocean. You're on the shore of Lake Yellowstone, like you can't see anything besides the water.
This campsite that's on the lake that you kind of finish your trip at kind of looked like a perfect little cherry on top, where you get to kind of sit by the lake and kind of relax and take a deep breath. How was that kind of wrapping up the trip? Is that what it felt like for you?
I'm not a big swimmer. I wouldn't classify myself as like, oh, I love the water. In fact, I oftentimes am like, just get me on a mountain. But the more I camp, the more I realize that like being on the water and being out in the woods are just inseparable. There's such a feeling about it, right? And I'm sure you can talk more on this too. Like it's that everything around you is in motion and you feel surrounded by the beauty of it all. And that's how I felt on the lake. It's just a big rock. You find a big rock like you're a kid and you're like, oh yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
And it's been warmed throughout the course of the day. And so you're sitting on a big rock that's like nice and toasty. And you've got the sound of the waves lapping onto the beach. And you have your shoes off and your feet look horrible and ugly. They smell rank, but I don't know. You're just filled with this sense of purpose and beauty and contentness that just it can't be beat. Lots of challenges, lots of not so great moments. I went a little crazy throughout the process, but yeah, it definitely ended on a high note.
So would you say overall that this trip was worth it in your eyes, even though it changed along the way and it didn't turn out exactly the way you wanted it to be? Overall, it seemed like a very positive experience.
100%. Yeah. I don't know if there's anyone out there saying this, but just in case there is, don't expect any trip to go as you plan. I think that's the mark of a good trip. If I'm being honest, I think this was a perfect experience for my first solo backpacking trip because it was imperfect, and that's exactly what these experiences are. They're just figuring it out on your own with what's on your back.
To me, that's where the adventure comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say I learned that lesson the hard way.
Yeah. More so on the return, you kind of can sit back and look at the whole picture and say, this didn't go how I planned, but it went how it should have.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Like I got what I needed out of it. And sometimes you don't even realize what that is until you're really far removed from the trip.
Yeah.
And you've had a lot of time to sit on it. This one, you could tell as soon as I get back to my car, I can tell how cool this trip was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's how you can tell the trip went well, even when it didn't go as expected.
What did you learn from this experience? Like, what did you take away from it?
The main takeaway is kind of how we've shaped the channel. Just get out there. Just go do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's how you're going to learn, right? Put yourself in a situation, be smart about the level in which you're you're sending yourself out there. But just do it. Like that's the only way, whether that's, with the most basic gear you can get from Walmart at a front country campsite with a bathroom that's 100 feet away, but you've never slept in a tent before. Like, go do that. Maybe you have to start with glamping to get yourself comfortable with the idea of camping. Whatever it is that your comfort zone is, go one step outside of that. Just get out there and go do it. This will be a core memory for me, I think, as I build these experiences. I'll remember how things went wrong, what I did about it, and also what went right, like what just happened by chance.
Yeah.
And how grateful I am for that.
We've had a lot of good listener questions, so we want to take some time and kind of answer those. We're just going to go through some of the list of questions that we've pulled and ask Jeff and get his answers here. So Daredevil Chicken wants to know, see any bears or wolves?
No bears or wolves, just lots of evidence that they were around. Lots of scats, claw marks on the trees, even some paw prints, but no sightings directly.
Doppel_M asked, when did you go on that hike? Do you think Yellowstone is worth visiting in December/January, or is most of it closed by then?
That's a good question. I don't believe it necessarily closes at any point. There are definitely better times to go during the season, being summer season. That's when the trails are the most open, and there's been a lot of work that's been done on the trails to make them more accessible. So if you're going into the Yellowstone backcountry for the first time, or this would be one of your early trips in your career of backpacking, then yeah, go during the summer. That's when I went. So I went in August, late August of 2024. So I'd recommend you do that. But if you are experienced, Yellowstone would be great year round. So can't get some snow camping, get some winter camping out there. That'd be cool too.
Nice. Another one we got is from, oh my God, these names are going to kill me. Siren Scorp. Siren Scorp asked, for someone from the East Coast, what would you recommend training-wise if I wanted to do a smaller version of your trip? It's a lot of flat trails where I live, but I have mountains. About 4 hours drive is my best option, walking incline on a treadmill at the gym.
It's a great question. It's one that I think a lot of people debate when they're thinking about how do I get out there? How can I prepare myself to get out there? Unfortunately, the best practice is literally just getting out there with a backpack, even if it's a day pack or, something that's small but is loaded up with weight. That can be a really great way to get started. Or you can throw on your big backpack and, keep it minimally weighted, right? Just get used to having that big thing, lugging it around on your back, going uphill. That's just being in the environment. It's hard to replicate it. Especially when all of those different pieces come together, right? Like the humidity and the temperature and the bugs and, how chafed you might get in certain areas of your body, right? All of that, wet feet. It's hard to replicate any of those things in the gym. However, the best gym exercise that I found, because gyms are much more accessible for most of us than, mountains.
Mountains, yeah.
I found that the Stairmaster, with, a pretty, I don't remember if it's a resistance factor, but the Stairmaster with a backpack loaded up like you would typically load it up for a backpacking trip. Outside of that specific machine, if you just work on your lower body, then that's going to be the best, most used thing when you're hiking long distances.
Just to clarify, because I think we've mentioned it before. I can't remember if we mentioned it earlier in the podcast. I think we did. Neuro_88 asked, how many miles did you end up completing on this journey?
Yeah, I completed just under 60. So I think it was maybe 58 if I'm, being specific, but I'm also not counting all the times I set up the camera and walked back to get the shot. So I round out at about 60.
Yeah, that sounds about right. No Market 9917 asks, is it common to go backpacking there solo? I've always wanted to, but I've been afraid of doing it solo in bear country. I'm from the Northeast, so grizzlies are something I never really have to think about.
Yeah. Is it common to go out in Yellowstone solo? I think it's probably more common to go with a group. Camping or hiking solo in grizzly country definitely has a different air of responsibility to it than it does, when there's no bears. But I would say that like if you have experience hiking and camping in black bear country, then you have a little bit of experience, and you're more mindful of what you need to do, for when you're doing that in grizzly country. It's much of the same. It just, has that extra level of caution, that you need to take before you just go out there, right? It's not something to be willy-nilly about, because that's disrespectful to the bear's habitat and their personal space, which you gotta respect, before you go out there and start trouncing around. But yeah, I would say fairly common and definitely doable, right? Like that was my first solo hike. So if you approach it properly, you do the research and you know how to identify the signs that they're nearby, and you work on prevention, then it's absolutely attainable.
Yeah, a lot of precautionary measures that you can take to keep yourself and the bears safe, such as bear spray, which you had, proper, bear safety techniques, such as the bear hangs that are provided at the campsites, bear canisters, the Bermuda Triangle that you had mentioned in the past. So all of that stuff, right. There's proper precautions that you can take. Absolutely. Here, one last question. We'll do this one and then we'll wrap it up. Competitive Cup 7592 asks, did you have any moments where you genuinely got a little freaked out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I the biggest one that comes to mind is when I realized I didn't have my PLB, like my personal locator beacon. Something as simple as twisted ankle can put me in a really dangerous situation, because I was hiking in an area that was so far away from, any road, any access point, and not having a way to let anyone know that I was injured would, I'd just be waiting on luck to help me out. And that's just not the situation you're going to find yourself in. So that was anxiety inducing for sure. Kind of stuck with me the whole time. Like even in good moments, I was like, okay, it's good right now, but don't lax too much. So I think the trip could have had a little bit more joy in it if I had brought that. Yeah. And other than that, when I'm solo in the woods, it's great until there's like a sound you can't quite identify. Sure. And you think, oh, that's definitely getting closer. It's 99% of the time just a deer. But in the chance that it's not, it can be really nerve wracking. Yeah, there's a handful of moments like that too at night.
Yeah, especially at night, you're settling in, I'm sure. Thank you guys so much for the questions. If anyone else has any questions, obviously feel free to ask, leave them in the comments or contact us. However, it's a pleasure getting questions and being able to answer them for you guys. So thank you so much. Awesome. Well, it was really great hearing about this trip and more so seeing it. And just a reminder, if you're watching this and you haven't seen the video, you can jump over to our YouTube channel and watch the full video there that this podcast is based on.
Thanks for having me again to talk about a trip. It's always a pleasure. And I'll see you on the next one. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Noah. This is Jeff. We're Adventures Live. You can find us on all of the socials on Instagram and Facebook at Adventures Live Productions, TikTok, X, and Blue Sky at Adventures Live. Our campground Discord server is in the link below. You can find us on Patreon for all of our adventure packets, including our itineraries, maps, and anything else we found useful to plan this adventure at patreon.com/adventureslive. And I think that's it. That's all I've got.